Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this third in our series of Conversazione, designed to engage with key themes and ideas of relevance to the study of early news. I should say something about the theme of Conversazione, which is conceived in different ways, I think. For Davide Boerio, it's a respite from the horrors of COVID. For me, it's a kind of throwback to the Renaissance authors we know and love, where the Conversazione was a way of life in a way, and also a way of writing and a way of engaging with culture. I'm Brendan Dooley. I'm a professor of Renaissance Studies at University College Cork and the principal investigator of the Euronews project, which, as many of you may know, is sponsored by the Irish Research Council and hosted at the University College Cork in collaboration with the Medici Archive Project in Florence. And we're studying the origins of news reporting, diffusion, and impact by analyzing the thousands of handwritten newsletters, or avvisi a mano, which are present in the Medici papers at the State Archives in Florence. Our guest today is Álvaro Casillas Pérez, who is a last year PhD student in the Departamento de Historia y Filosofía at the Universidad de Alcalà, and also in the Departamento de Antiquità, Filosofia y Historia at the Università degli Studi di Genova. His PhD research deals with the Ottoman Navy, analyzed through the information provided by spies and agents of the Hispanic monarchy in the Levant during the time of Suleiman the Magnificent. He's also a research fellow at the Centro Europeo para la Difusión de las Ciencias Sociales. He's also interested in the impact of new technologies on audiovisual language on investigation, education, and diffusion of historical knowledge, which we were introduced to in a conversation with him just the other day. And his topic today is Spying Through Digital Eyes, a TEI markup proposal to analyze secret information in the Habsburg Ottoman Mediterranean context. And before I say thanks to Álvaro and have him take the floor, let me just say that we have been given a set of rather challenging readings, I have to say. And the discussion following Álvaro's presentation will regard not only what he has had to say, but also these rather challenging readings in several languages. So exciting. Well, okay, so there were two readings and two languages. That's and so that's it from me for the moment. And Álvaro, you have the floor. And so I think you're going to, yes, so I think you're going to.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Today we are going to speak several languages, because I speak, my English is really bad, my Italian is really bad, and my Spanish is not good enough. So I prepare a text. We're going to see the PowerPoint, and I hope to enter in the time, in the 30 minutes. So good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, the Euronews project staff, to invite me to speak today in here. Today I would like to introduce you to a part of my PhD research carried out during the last 5 years. In particular, I would like to present its methodology, which is a novelty in historical research, I believe. Briefly, this method would have been designed to analyze the sources under study, news produced by spies coming or settled in the Levant, and consisting of a TEI markup scheme to select and classify certain data of interest for research, and the application of different types of software to visualize it. Emphasis will also placed on the theoretical framework that has underpinned the method, the main problems and advantages that have been encountered, and its application on future lines of research to be carried out from it. Briefly, the main objective of this doctoral thesis has been to systematically examine the naval information contained in the narratives elaborated by the spies at the service of the Hispanic monarchy in the Ottoman Empire for the specific chronology of 1520 and 1566 dates that enclose Suleiman's The Magnificent Sultanate. With this, it has been pursued to satisfy two research interests. The first one has focused on reflecting about the entire Ottoman naval system based on the description provided by their accounts. Barely used by the subject's historiography, in them it has been observed a multitude of data that have to do mainly with a whole series of activities carried out with the aim of organizing a naval military campaign and with its full development. The second one, in turn, has been oriented to study their own accounts, composed of their own life experience or with first-hand informants to explain a world practically unknown to its potential readers. This has involved assessing the role of the experiential or the empirical, both for the knowledge of a different reality and in political decision-making. The study of the source was to play a fundamental role in the research. To begin with its analysis, it was necessary to create a double set of categories that would make it possible to define first the authors of these sources, and second, the documentation itself, based on the historiography on the subject. The polysemy of the word spy at the time didn't hide the fact that it is possible to differentiate between different types by virtue of the work they did for the spying service and the time and place where it carry out. The result was a set of 4 types of spy who would have operated in the Levant. I put it there in English. I'm going to read in Spanish. I don't know if it's a good English, but it's el agente, el corresponsal, el espía circunstancial y el enlace. Later if you want, we can enter in this typology and explain a little bit, but I want to focus on the 5 types of documents who corresponds with these people, with these subjects. The first of all, it is the relación de agente, the agent report, a document in the form of a report that shows the results of an agent mission, a people who is sending into the Levant, what he's seen, heard of experience during his travel to the Levant. I choose this example, a person called Jorge Zeki, a Greek inhabitant in Corfu, sent to Constantinople to Constantinople 1533 for the Marqués de Atripalda, one of the chief of espionage in the kingdom of Naples. No? You can see the transcription in Galata, que es in Constant. I can see the whole because there is the camera in there. So you can see that there is a late inform. I didn't count with that, but there is information that he's telling what he has seen in his travel. Like he is go there and see the ships and how many, the army and so on, and it's information that it's needed by the Spanish monarchy. So it's in there. The second one, News from the Levant, or Avisos de Levante, that I call, a document created by a correspondent that includes notice sent him by his collaborators, as well as his own consideration and news gathered from his command post in or near Ottoman territory. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. Yes, I think that, all right. Again, I choose an example che il turco è infastidito e arrabbiato di tristezza e quasi fuori di sé perché la sultana gli dava da bere di quel maslak turchesco con la mistura dell'opio per farlo stare allegro e lieto. E altro is another example of the kind of information that they could give. It's not only a practical information, but about the Navy, for example, but about the, I don't know, the Suleiman, for example, how is he, or if he is in war, or how is he with his sons, for example. This is important for the Spanish monarchy to know if in this year it's going to be an army or not, a campaign or not. Again, the deposición de testigo y el interrogatorio de prisionero. The first one, a report voluntarily generated by those returned from the Turkish Berber territory who narrated their experience during their journey, like a soldier, for example, like a merchant, like un rescatador de cautivos, these kind of people. And the second one, a report obtained through an interrogation of a prisoner generally captured in the Turkish Berber attack in this area. In this case, I put another example, and I'm doing so briefly, about a man called Mariano de Losa, a Ragusian merchant who goes to Alexandria in this moment. And when he's in there, he found someone who tell this quote, that is, por amor de Dios, hermano, pues vais a la cristiandad, dad nueva de cómo el gran turco arma 150 bajeles entre galeras mahonas y otros navíos para ir contra la goleta, y que la guarden bien, que Dios quiera que no la tomen. That he is saying, like, there's an army. Turkish is doing an army, a really big army with 150 vessels, and he's going to attack La Goleta, that it's a North African place from the Spanish monarchy, really important in the center of the Mediterranean. The next one is called Síntesis de Avisos, or Summary of News, a document written by the Enlace, the link, that it's an ambassador or a secretary of the viceroyal who lives in the Christian territory always, more or less a list of news from different sources with key or written particles who separate each other. In this case, I'm going to focus in this case because we are going to see the evolution of how we have this document and how we label it to study. In this case, I don't know if it's if you can see it well. Me neither. It's an example of this síntesis de avisos, and we can see it for example, por letras de Constantinopoli de 18 de julio de 1536, and I can read two paragraphs. For example, the first one, que no sabían allí ninguna cosa de Barbarroja después que partió, porque se cortaba mucho leñamen y se hacían galeras nuevas en aquel tarsanal y tomaban maestros y marineros de las naves que allí aportaban con pensamiento de hacer gruesa armada para el año venidero. It's a new about how they are creating a really a big army, and they are putting like the people who work in these navies that they are going to do this Gruesa Armada, this great army, to put it in the Mediterranean the next year. And in another letters, por letras de Constantinopla de 15 y 19 del dicho julio, they say que ha ordenado el turco que se haga hasta 300 palanteras. It's a type, a specific type of ship, en diversas partes para traer en cada una de ellas 40 caballos. It's this one. Y que para esto se usa con toda diligencia en cortar madera, como en tomar todos los maestros que podían haber, así de labrar casas como cosas de mar, y que ajuntaba todo el dinero, y podía el turco con pensamiento de meter en orden una gruesa armada para el año que viene, y venir en la puya. And in this case, they are saying the destiny of this army. They are not only saying the people who is working on it and all the actions that surround this, but they are saying, okay, this is going to be the exact type of ship that they are making, and this is really, really important. And the army is going to attack Puglia in the next year. It's 1537. Okay. Both classifications made it possible not only to work more efficiently with the documentation, but also guide the work of the archive in the next phase, in its selections, for which it was decided to work only with the written sources conserved in the Archivo General de Simancas. I use another archives in the PhD thesis, but for this method, for applying this method, I only use the one conserved in the Archivo General de Simancas. This main reason was that it was the final destination of a large part of the documents produced by the Hispanic Intelligence Service in the Levant. Once the JPEG file image was sent by its administration department, it has to be converted into a format that allowed the computer to operate in a computerized way, on which one could search, delete, move, or add words, modify, or create new files from the originals. In order to do so, it was necessary to transcribe the text on the basis of rules, whose maxim was to transfer the textual content without doing an exact copy of the form taken by its writing, in order to facilitate its analysis. More than anything, the objective was to transfer the text that was in an image to a TXT format, whose characters could be not only readable, but modifiable by the computer. The structure chosen to organize the documentation was a corpus type, a way to unify different texts in the same XML file in a more extensive, ordered, and coherent set possible to be used for research purpose. In this way, 7 different corpus were created, 6 coming from different subcollections of the collection of Estado, Génova, Estados Pequeños de Italia, Costas de África y Levante, Nápoles, Sicilia y Venecia, and the last one from Guerra y Marina collection, that it's a different from Estado. And we see an example of the transcription in this part. Okay. Finally, its transcription and the corpus itself had to be supplemented with a catalographic file with the metadata, which would give information about the document itself, and which would then also have to be translated into a language chosen to carry out the study of the documentation. In this case, you can be the example, the synthesis aviso that I show the image with this metadata. I don't put the metadata of the corpus. If you want, we can see later, but this is the values that I choose to put on it. A signature, Archivo General de Simancas, Estado, Venecia, 1312-36, a way to locate the document in the archive. The author, in this case, anónimo, we can figure it out, but anónimo. El título, por letras de Constantinopla de 18 de julio de 1536, title. The date. The place of production of the document, Venice. Language, castellana, español. Y its extension, that it's 2 folios. Okay. And in the size, you have the metadata in the XML with more or less the same. It's the same values, it's the same text, but with the labels that you need to put to translate it in XML. Okay. Both classification made it possible. Okay. Finally, however, in themselves, the transcription are meaningless. Is meaningless to the computer. It can operate changes on text, but unless it's given a precise instructions, a computer cannot know, for example, whether a word is a verb or a noun, or nor where really it evokes its semantic value, whether a certain part of a text is a paragraph or a line, or even its writing context, and therefore cannot operate at that level. And we are interested to operate on that level. To give precise meaning to its components, there are at least 2 tools: markup languages and hermeneutics, marks or labels that describe these elements on the basis of an interpretative and therefore subjective act carried out by a user who decides which elements he wants to represent and analyze. A markup language then offers the user a set of labels recognizable by the computer on which the latter can operate. With a meta-language, a language descriptive of other language, which has its own vocabulary and syntax, which specifies what issues can be marked and the most appropriate form for this. In practice, the humanist must reflect on the text he or she is facing, look for those parts that can be labeled based on a specific theoretical framework and specific research interest, and reflect on the mark themselves in order to select those that allow this task to be carried out. Integrated in the text with its application, this set of labels chosen allows to show only one of the dimensions of the text that exists in reality, a certain reading that is not other than the one imposed by the author of the marking. At the same time, it builds a new level of reading, that is the original text together with its labels. The markup language chosen was XML, with the guidelines provided by TEI Consortium for text editing, and in the basic experience or the approaches made in the Avisos de Levante project, of which I was a member and I collaborated with them. And the 2 lectures that I sent to you, it's about this theoretical framework. So we have the text transcribed and the markup language chosen. The next step was to define the structure of the text, to give form and order to its textual components, so that it can be read and referenced by a user. In this sense, the author of the original source imposed a form to the transmission of his ideas on the paper, which does not necessarily correspond to its foliation, and which has more to do with its division by paragraphs, a matter that was decided to mark. In turn, a superior structure should be labeled, which could be recognized in the text, and which would be made up at least of 3 parts: a front, middle, or back. In this case, I have the text transcribed, and okay, you have the label front. If you remember, it's the first line that I read, that it's at the beginning of the document. The label body, that in this case it's to all the document, because there is not a back, something written in the back of the letter. Imagine like avisos de levante with this data, for example. This is the most common. And I mark all the paragraphs, like with the label P, number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 9, etc. Okay. In order later to referentiate, to know what is this kind of information. When this action has been carried out for each of the documents, it was the time to add the labels to study the document. It's the interesting. To this end, it was not necessary to examine 6 elements. The segmentos de información, I'm going to say it in Spanish, and you have the translator, more or less the translation in there. Nombres, lugares, términos específicos, fechas, y cantidades contained in the text. The first step was to locate these segmentos de información, these information segments, the only ones that would be studied to meet the objectives of the research, and which would therefore be covered by all the other labels. Conceptualized as the minimum unit of information, this not necessarily have to correspond to some textual division, but could have been developed indifferently in one or several paragraphs, in one or several sentences. Given the research question established at the beginning about this naval question in the naval system of the Ottoman Empire, it was thought only to mark as a segment of information those related with the Ottoman naval system as a whole, including all the activities related to the, the construction of repairing of the ships, the recruitment of the oarsmen, the transport of goods, obtaining news, battle preparation, etc. You can find the label for this is the label seg. We put it an XML ID, an identification who identifies the segment of information. In this case, you will have with the number of the with the number of the document and the order of appearance, 10, 11, 12, etc. A type and a subtype, 2 values who classify the information, who classify this, which classifies this information. Okay, dice que ha ordenado el turco que se hagan hasta 300 palanteras en diversas partes, cada una de ellas, etc. I don't see it well, but it's the same. Okay, they are saying something about manufacture navies, and we classify with these values. Okay, the second one, fábrica material, they are telling us about they are cutting wood, for example, or the last one, they are preparing an army, a navy. Or they are saying, this is not marking there, that the plan is to fight against Puglia. So we can say, okay, this is a plan, and it's a plan offensivo, because they are saying that they are going to attack. They are not saying that they are going to defend their land. They are going to attack another place. So we try to classify the information contained by these documents in this form. Okay. So for labeling names, place, and terms, specific terms,
it was decided to generate a reference system in which each concept marked in the text with a unique identifier would be linked to its counterpart in the list, where it would already be accompanied by those attributes that would serve for its analysis. The presence in both cases of this exclusive code is what allow later in the phase of the data extraction and visualization to replace it with the real values of analysis. Thus, the labels selected to mark names, places, and terms were, you can see there, names, place name, place name, and term. And in there, you can find, for example, an example. Again, the same information. Que ha ordenado el turco. Turco is a name. It's the name of Soliman. They are referring to him in the document. So we use the value name, the label name, and we put this identifier, N001, that belongs to this value on a list in a different XML document with the values, the real values that it would be placed in the text, but it's not, because it's if you put it, it's going to be a mess. So in this case, we say that he's a person and he belongs to the Turco-Berberisco side, to the Turkish Berber side, and with the attribute key, we say, and his name is Soliman. And wherever the form it's appear in the document, we are going to identify him with this identifier and with the same key. And this is important because we can identify different person with different significance with the same meaning. Okay, the same with the place and the same with the term. Right here, we have a place, for example, Puja. It's a region. We mark with this identifier P085, and we have all the values in the list. In this case, it's a region. But if it's, for example, Napoli, we know that Napoli it's a place in a map. So we use a UTM number or code that we allow us later to put this place in a map, only with places. I think that you can do it with regions too, but we only focus with concrete places, specific places in the space. Okay, and the term it's the same. Palandri in this case, it marked in the text T with a T and 105. Palanteras, Palandria, and with two values to define more or less, and the key Palandria, that it's the name, the real name of this term. You are going to find this term in different ways of significance in the document of the spies. But with this, you can find, or you can put it together with the same key. Okay. With regard of dates and quantities, they are always spelled, and in this case, we put all the information in the text. For this purpose, the label date was established to mark events or periods in their and the regularized dates and measure, and the other one was measure. And in this later, we have the problem to indicate the unit of measurement that could be used to quantify such disparate elements as, for example, the cannons embarked on a galley, or the number of galleys in an army, etc., while maintaining the thing itself measured on the label to facilitate the agent work in a later stage in the visualization. To do this, the decision was made to use an identifier, so attribute an XML attribute to identify the measured thing, and a quantity attribute to indicate the quantity of the measured term. So it's a mess. So you can find it there in the text. Measure, it's 300, but we know that there are palandrias. So we are using an identifier T105 to know later in the extraction part that we have 300 palandrias, 300 palandrias. Okay. The date, I don't see any date, maybe in here, but I don't know if you see, but it's the same. We put the attribute when in this case, but we can mark periods. If they started to do the galleys from this point and end in that point, we can write this in the labeling. Okay. So the task of labeling was, however, very laborious. One of the ways to simplify the task was the use of a technique called regular expressions, or regex, a computer technique that analyzed text in order to perform search and replace operation. This requires the use of an expert to construct and plan the search pattern, because for me it was impossible, using a particular combination of normal characters, letters, numbers, and etc., and other representing ideas such as quantity, location, or a particular type of character. The objective in this case was complex, to enable the system to search for a particular term within a segment of information and to replace it with a construct composed of itself and the label that should accompany it in all the cases. You can find the regular expression in there, okay, in this for the names, this for the place, well, and this for them, it's the same, it's more or less the same, but it changes things. We are saying to the program that find me the word Turco in all the information segments and replace it by Turco with this label, name XMLID, N001 Turco, la etiqueta, the label, the closed level of name, okay? In practice, it's more easy, but you have this and it works. So this is an example of all these documents labeled, okay, complex, but later we can see if you want, I can share the window again with this. So once the labeling was finished, it started the next phase, building the visualization that would organize a large amount of data into simple formulas, more or less simple formulas. This could be used to draw conclusions that could ultimately meet the research objectives set out at the outset. The plasticity provided by the electronic medium and the practicality of the method used would play a key role here, as the data contained in the digital copy of the archive source could be reused again and again and sorted and combined in different ways. Again, and for some of the related issues, experts in computer technology had to be taught in. First of all, it was necessary to be clear out about the analysis to be carried out, to better define the questions to be asked to the source in order to adapt the data extraction to this issue. In summary, 3 exercises were also proposed in this doctoral research. Based on progressively reducing the time frame, ordering the data extracted differently, and even understanding the method more broadly. The first one, to analyze which are the names, place, and terms most frequently used in the naval information given by spies without making any distinction by activity, analyzing their frequency of appearance in the documentation for the whole Suleiman Sultanate for all the period, okay? The second one, to analyze what were the segment of information most used by spies in their documents, to study whether they corresponded to the seasons, and to examine the frequency of names, place, and terms in those segments, limiting in this case the chronology to the time of Barbarossa as Capudan Pasha or Admiral of the Ottoman Empire. And the third one, to analyze one campaign, the one that the Ottomans led to Corfu and Apulia and Puglia in 1537, the document that we see is one of them, opting instead for examining the frequency of appearance for the narrative to carry out this exercise and for using alternative formulas, narrative formulas, such as a map. The first step was to extract the information from the labeled documents using 2 different strategies depending on how the information was processed. Thus, on the one hand, computer programs were applied that could directly and automatically read both the transcribed text and the mark in the text, organize and represent them according to previously established guidelines. And on the other hand, others were used to require the previous process of conversion of the textual data to a CSV, CSV, separate values, format. In the later, a file would be generated for each name, place name, term, date, and measure tag, where all these data would be reflected without losing the link with its seg. 3 main programs were used to carry out the visualization: Buoyant, MATLAB, and Excel, I think that the Boolean and Excel are more common. MATLAB is the least known of the three, I think, although it was one of the most versatile, since it has not only allowed the automatic generation of visualization in the form of bar charts, with the most frequent name, place name, and term in its label documentation, or the creation of a graph to represent the greater or lesser link of a character with an activity, but also to carry out the second of the strategies and to extract the names, place, terms, dates, and quantities marked in a file TCV without losing the visualization with the set of information where they are. The creation of the map that I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation was more complex. It consisted of a way of working and representing the data extracted from the selected documentation, and of elaborating of a different narrative, which could tell by itself and in a visual way the military development of a campaign where the Navy played an important role. As a previous step, we had to go back to the documentation, to the data extracted, and draw up a list of actions ordered by the season where they were carried out, so that we could have a list of actions that could be represented on the map. In this case, it was decided to use only the data related to the military movements and actions of the Ottoman, and in this case, all the French and the Berber armies for both years, completing the information when it was necessary, and focusing the representation on its statistical development. With this objective in mind, 4 cartographic representations were chosen. The first one would contain an overview of the Mediterranean Sea, showing the movements of ships towards the conflict zone, the eastern shores of the Ionian Sea and the Otranto Channel. And the remaining 3 would frame only this scenario to express the operation carried out by the Ottoman army during different times in the summer of 1537. You have the 2 origins of the representation of the maps. The first one, an atlas of Battista Agnese that you can find in the Biblioteca Digital Hispanica, and if you want, I can send the link. And the 3 representations of the eastern shores of the Ionian Sea and the Otranto Channel, they come from the Piri Reis Kitab Ibarille, that you can find also in the Internet Walters Art Museum of Baltimore, I think. That's it. In order to make these 2 representations, it was decided to use these 2 16th century portulans. What the idea of approaching a historical space that with greater or lesser success would not only have been defined by the words of spies, but would also have been imagined by maps made at the time itself. Once the digital image of both maps was obtained, it was necessary to carry out the vectorization using Inkscape by hand and incorporating the data with the same program. Okay. So the use of a methodology such as the one outlined so far has resulted in a series of premises, advantages, problems, and possible lines of research that I will also briefly outline below. At first, it was necessary to reflect on the specificities of the digital media and the data generated in its environment. Its flexibility, adaptability, and capacity to support and interpret the new narrative languages open the door to news accounts different from the traditional one that can inaugurate new analysis paths or encourage in the task related to diffusion and divulgation of the results. In this sense, one of the main pitfalls that the historian encounters is in the technique, which has been saved on the most difficult occasion by seeking the help of a specialist in computer science. Another disadvantage has been both the complexity of creating the method and its application. As far as its creation is concerned, it was necessary to spend a lot of time learning techniques that were not part of the historian curriculum, and to become familiar with all of them, even when the help of a technician was requested in the most complex situations. As far as application is concerned, slight errors have been found in transcription and labeling, despite the recent process carried out, resulting from not fully understanding the text, human errors, the application of regular expression, and so on. further revision will allow the result to be refined and published online in the near future, I hope. Although the method can seem difficult or new due to its format or complicated in its application, there is no hiding the suspicion that in reality, it does not differ much from the analysis technique of the humanists. In essence, the approach has consisted on the classification of a very precise information based on an ontology, and for its use, it has been required to resort the hermeneutics, the critical readings of text. In a similar way to other formulas already common in their work, the methodological proposal has served as an instrument of interpretation that organizes and models the data in an electronic environment for specific purposes, and the ultimate aim of generating new knowledge. In this sense, the choice of a markup language as XML/TEI for the analysis of the historical document determined the focus of the analysis towards a study of the words that make up the selected sources. The application of a specific set of labels came to center it in a series of names, places, specific terms, with which the spies evolved and shaped the actors, words, and actions of their accounts. So it became a database in an electronic media that offered enough freedom of order to work with them. Also, this has allowed the capacity of examining a vast volume of documentation and data in an extensive manner. In fact, it seems that the digital methods are always related to this matter, and even that their use forces it to be so. But in the study phase, it has been possible to qualify a bit this idea. When testing its use on a smaller set of text by centering the target on a more specific event, it has been proven that even when the mass of its analysis is lost, their capacity of classified information and to use new formulas to exercise new readings still remains. On the one hand, regarding the results obtained for the Ottoman case, the characteristic that defined all the aspects of its complex naval system had already been outlined quite well in historiography. In this regard, resorting to the documentation produced by the informants has meant at least a different look from the actors who are witness of the functioning of all of these mechanisms described by historiography. Moreover, the investigation of the sources and the actors led to a conclusion. There was a process of elaboration of knowledge that led to the spies to narrate in their text a whole series of information acquired to explain, give shape to a word, to a series of actors and action unknown by their readers. Witnessing the narration, knowing it very firsthand, gives their accounts a condition of a greater truthfulness, at least, than in other sources about the Ottoman reality, where there is a higher presence of prejudice or idealizations. Without falling into the illusion of objectivity and aware of both the effects of disinformation and their own mistakes, it has been found that if there is something that they try to do is to make known as accurately as possible any activity whose ultimate claim is to damage the Mediterranean Hispanic kingdoms, so that their authorities can make a decision as fast and accurate as possible. So, on the other hand, regarding with the future lines, the first line involved building from a network perspective, the nodes for obtaining and receiving news under means of transmission extending the chronology until the end of 16th century. This actually constitutes a complex study where the identities of those who were the first front line in obtaining information, who formed the first circle of confidence, and the places where they operated would first have to be determined. Second, to analyze the places of origin of the avisos that arrived at the Hispanic embassies and viceroyalties, and clarify if this specialization by its own existed. And third, stress whether or not there were definitive or temporary addition and deletion of routes for their transfer. An ambitious research that nevertheless will always have to deal with the problematic absence of data. And the second line deals with going deeper into the very content of the sources produced by Hispanic intelligence services, trying to carry out the systematic tracking of which are the topics dealt with by their authors, indicating the level of detail with which they are able to compose their accounts. This is the approach taken in this doctoral thesis. Initially, the aim was to carry out a comprehensive examination of the documentation in order to see all the subjects covered by their writings, and thus offer an informative overview within the framework of the Sultanate of Suleiman. But I lost this way because it was really difficult. The proposal entailed an enormous difficulty related to the great quantity and diversity of data that would be obtained and the complexity of studying them in an intensive manner. And I focus in the naval system because it's a very more accurate, more más concreto. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for your attention. I don't know about the time, so I hope that it's not a lot. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much, Álvaro, for this extremely detailed and illuminating presentation of a fascinating project. You've covered many of the areas, not only that are in the reading, but are also in our own work. I see members in my group nodding their heads. Also, maybe a certain amount of envy about the breadth of the technological accomplishment. Very fascinating. I think we're going to learn a lot from this. But let me just start the questions now. We're going to go first, I think, to specific questions regarding the your presentation, because the two readings, which go in slightly different directions, may take us to some different areas and some different topics, but we want to be sure to have exhausted our queries in regard to your own work and your PhD before we go on to those readings. So what I'd like to do is to open the floor to those who wish to say something, and I'm looking for hands raised and comments in the chat, which are all welcome to contribute to. You know how to raise your hand if you want to raise your hand to intervene. Maybe you're
Lorenzo,
so completely mesmerized by what you've heard that
There's a question in the chat.
okay.
there is Lorenzo, right?
Okay. Let's
Can I
see.
speak or can I write?
Yeah,
Oh,
you can speak or write whatever you want.
Okay. Oh, hi Alvaro. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. I have some questions for you. I wanted to ask, what kind of system did you use for the data entry? I mean, did you enter the TI manually?
Yes.
Okay, so but where does XML reside? Is it a big XML file? Did you structure in? I mean, you have. I think that you see that you have cross-reference inside your XML. So you use different XML files with one which were containing transcriptions, actors, right?
Okay. I create 7 different XML files. Using a software called Sublime Text, but this is not important. You can use another Beam block, the Notepad++, whatever. I use Sublime Text because for me it's Atom. But for me, this editor, it works. It's perfect. So that's it. I create 7 corpus, 7 XML documents. With the working with TIA, not with the transcription. The transcription I made it in another format. I use the Notepad, and I create a document for each document. So for me it's easiest because in this case I made a process. The first one was the transcription of document, and I create a huge quantity of transcriptions that later I need to review and only select a few to do the work with XML, because if not, I don't have enough time to do it all the transcription. But I use this program and I use these different kind of different types of corpus. If you want, if we have time later, I can show you one of the XML file and we can see completely if it serves to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it would be nice to compare our own XML
I can show
approach
the map
with
and
your.
one of the corpus.
Oh yeah, yeah, it would be good to look at the map.
Another question. I did not understand why you use regex for. I mean, do you use them for cross-reference search? Can you give an example on how you did use them?
No, I use it for labeling, for put the TIA label. Okay. The point was that I need to do the labeling of.
But sorry, you use the regex to label.
Yep. Yep.
Not to search, to filter.
That's no. I have okay. My way of working in there was I put all the documents in the same corpus. Imagine the corpus Sicilia. I put all the documents of the corpus Sicilia that I wanted to analyze. 100. Imagine 100 and whatever 100. And you have all of them with the metadata, with the text front, back, body label, with the paragraph marked, and with the information segment that I want to analyze. For example, in this information, there are all of these segments. But you can find in this segment, you're going to find that there are places, actors, terms that you are going to find it all the time, like turco, for example. And you are saying turco, el turco ha realizado, el turco está realizando armada. There is an armada, it's going, you are, en Constantinopla se está haciendo una armada, etc., etc. It's the same all the time because the place that they are looking for is Constantinopla, the person is El Turco, or is Barbarroja, or is Dragut, or there are actors that you are always, you're going to find in the documentation. So my thing in that is, okay, if I'm going to find it always, I'm going to find a method that I can do this job in a more easy and quick way, because I don't have much time to do it. So I speak with my technician and he told me, you can do this. And it was perfect. So because it's easy, you are going to find mistakes. You're going to commit mistakes. Because imagine that you want to label galera. You can do it with this method and it's going to be okay. But what happens if you find galeras in plural? That you are going to have a mistake. So you are not going to do it with galera.
You're searching for terms with regex.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so it's a search. So you search for them and then you tag them.
Yes, but in an automatic process. I search for them and you
wrote a program that does that, obviously.
Yeah, I take them.
Because from your presentation, it seemed that maybe it was me that didn't understand, that you were using the regex to do cross-reference search within your 7 corpuses. Your file,
no.
Your files, you know, that was what I was asking. Okay,
no. Regex was used. In fact, I use regex for 2 things. The first one, the easiest, the thing that I do by myself, not the code, but just the action of doing, is that label the terms, names, and places that appear always. And later you need to review and you need to complete this work because you're not going to find every term with that. With this, you can the process simplifies a lot because the work you need to apply to the labeling of the text, it's not so big and it's easy. The second use of regex that I don't understand quite well, so I'm not explaining here because it's a little bit more technical, it's to extract the data, because the process is the same. With MATLAB, you are saying to the program, like, you find me this that is in there, and you need to put this in this way, in another format. So it's quite different, but I mean, this is the question of the that I understand in this way. He explained me in this way too, to understand, but you are using the same technique in reality. So so I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, sure. It was only a misunderstanding. So you,
Okay,
you have a program that uses regex to find your things, and then you replace those things with tags, and you do a searches using regex. Regex are very complicated to use. This is why I was saying to you, I was asking you these questions, because you need to study a lot to use them. That are quite tricky in some ways. I was wondering how you could use that interactively as an historian. That was my question. So just wanted to understand how you were, using it.
The application, I do it by myself, because the application, it's more, you can use, in this case, I use Notepad++, but any XML editor, even with Summline text, you can do it. But no, the creation, it's not for me. I only say to my technician, I want this, and he did it. So yeah, I have this like to have. I know. I mean, I study about regular expressions. I know that this could be the way, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know the technique to create it. To apply it, yes. To create it, no.
Thank you.
I like the approach of just telling the technician and the very subtle. But I had
I can do it because
okay. Yeah. I had a question about
the technician was my brother, so
I
can do that.
Excellent, splendid. No, but I had a question in regard to some of the tags that you were using. So you pointed out, for instance, that hashtag P085 was Apulia, right? Now, so I can imagine that is that's a standard geotag for Puglia, perhaps.
No.
The code. Okay.
The code of the XML attribute,
that's chosen by you.
Yeah, it's okay. We designed and create that because we need to find a way. We need to find a way to identify this in a list with a set of values. And I speak with another technician that we are speaking together, and we say, okay, the best way to do it is to create this identifier that can that's it. I mean, that you can link with a value in the list, and that's it.
Because for instance,
and in this case is the P, it's for place, the N for name, and the T for term, and then the number. We imagine that we don't know. We imagine that we are not going to find more than 999 terms, names, or places. With this text, it's going to be impossible. So we figure that with these 3 zeros. Okay. Later, if you want, I can show the list if you want. But that's it. We have in this case la quinta entrada, the 5th entry in the list was Puglia. And this is why it's P005.
Okay.
But it's created on my own.
Okay, fair enough. But this sort of, I mean, Rachel Madura has a related question. She's saying in the chat, apologies if I missed this, but what was the process of going from the image to the text? And do you plan to release your data work with the dissertation in some form, and hopefully soon?
The first one is doing the transcription. Yeah, by hand. I mean, doing the transcription. They are easy, not easy, but not complicated tests. I mean, 2 pages, maybe 3, 4. You can do it by hand. It's not a problem. And the second one is complicated. I'm going to do it, but I don't know when, because I need to live and money and and so on. So yeah. I will do it. More or less, I was thinking to do a part of it in the Archivo de la Frontera this summer, but all depends on my life right now. But yeah, I have it in the way. I only need to review it to clear the mistakes, and that's it.
I have a question, if I can.
Please do.
First of all, thank you so much for this impressive work you have done. Really a lot of stuff. I remember you actually, the last time we saw on the archive of Naples, you were doing some research. Then you have also done research in Genova, in very different archives. And it's very impressive. And it's, for me, it's really also, maybe we will have a talk later on after this, because when you were talking about a lot of things, first of all, I think that many documents that you have actually treated in your corpus, we encounter them every day. For example, in Medici del Principato, there are many avisos de Levante, which actually, especially from that period, like 15, let's say second half of 16th century, regarding the news from the Levant. So another things, when we were talking about, so one thing that struck me the most, that I can say, and the difference between your and our approach at this moment is that we mostly are focusing on the paragraph unit in a way, because we are treating the news, the piece of news. One difference that actually you have shown, you are focusing on segments in a way. So actually on the period. And these take a lot of effort and a lot of time. Another difference that from you and us is that you are focusing on more than the actually, I don't know, or maybe you are, I don't know, I'm asking, more on the let's say, the movement of news, on the movement of the actors. I don't know if you're in the corpus, you have something related to the movement of news, like the sources of that news, who is actually giving that particular information. And actually, yes, while you were talking, actually I was thinking about some theoretician like Bruno Latour and actor network theory, when he put together actors, vectors, things, and other stuff in order to, let's say, describe this word, not necessarily to explain it, but to describe it. And I think maybe this work. So just the question is about if you have some label that can trace the sources of news, because I am really interested in the movement, because most of these things happen in a very wide, let's say, space that sometimes you cannot identify, because how you can identify where is the ship in the Mediterranean? You don't have the radar, right? So how also your approach with places, and also your approach with dates, because sometimes it's really difficult, actually. So if you can elaborate a bit more on this, just briefly, and I shut up. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay. No, my interest in the when I do the labeling was to analyze the content of the news, but it's true that there is a way to study what you are saying, the movement of news, the place of production, the people involved. That is with the metadata. This is the only way that in my information you can do this, because the later I didn't label in my analysis, because at the end I was focused on study this, and I don't have time to do.
Right.
I think that you can do it with the method, but
Yeah.
in this case, I couldn't do it.
No, we are doing this, but I
Right
also
now, with my corpus, with
No.
all of them, I can do it with the metadata.
right.
Because in there, you can find the place where it's produced. But imagine with this synthesis de avisos, I put an easy example. Por letras de Constantinopla, por letras de Constantinopla.
Claro.
That's it. But in others, you can find por letras de Constantinopla, por letras de Adrianópolis, por letras de
que hablan de Persia.
Alejandría.
Que hablan de Persia, de India.
For example, yeah. That's in the example, for example. In this document that I put, they are speaking about Eunuco Baja, that it's a person who have the power in Egypt. They are focusing in Constantinople, but they are focusing in all the Ottoman Empire because it's interesting. So the new come from they heard this new from Constantinople. It's the capital. It's normal, but they are speaking about different part of the Ottoman Empire. So in this case, I think that the most of the information that I have comes from them, from this place, from Constantinople, but they speak about the whole, in the 60s, for example, they start to speak about Russian. They speak a lot about the Indian Ocean. They speak a lot of the Persian frontier. That's the information they try to explain. I don't know. They try to say, okay, these are the problems of the Ottoman Empire. They are focusing on that. They are not going to send us the army in this summer. But no, with more precision, I can do it. With right now, I can do it.
If I can I just have another question very briefly? So, compare the effort you have done. In your conclusion that you show up, you have actually, in a way, confirmed some, let's say, assumption made by traditional historiography. My question is, what if the effort was worth the final actually outcome, and then if you have actually find out new line of research that you could never been able to see without this method?
About the effort. If I link the effort with the results, I mean, I work in a different way. For me, the effort for me it's great. I mean, I do this effort, and it's okay. Maybe I confront the historiography, maybe not, because maybe I only complete the map. I only put different examples. I give a different insight. Not it's confronting the historiography, because it's a well-known thing. The Ottoman army, the Mediterranean Sea, it's a classic in historiography. I'm not going to say something that makes a revolution in this, but I can complete the field. I can complete the map. I think that using this news, I can say my spies, they are living this world. They are living in that time, in that coyuntura, in that moment, and they are reporting this. They are saying, esto está pasando. This is happening right now in Constantinople, and we can reconstruct this. And this is not said by the historiography. The historiography can say, okay, but the galley is the common, the common ship in the Ottoman army. Okay, but I can say, in this summer they construct this in this port, in this place. They are saying, oh, the boot came from them. The historiography say, the place or the donde ellos hacían madera, where they produce the boot was there. I say yes, but in another place. In this, in La Bellona, in Blore, this is a a place where ships are produced. And this is something that it's not saying by the historiography, I think. I don't find this like a place of production. These kind of things. But I'm not confronting, I'm not saying, yeah, you were wrong. And it's not like
well,
that.
you've made me think of, so the first part of your response made me think of something that an artist in Boston once told me about a project she was working on, and it was a sculpture that was taking a very long time for her to do. And I was saying, well, you know, the tension must be tremendous between starting it and waiting for what it's going to look like. And she said, well, actually, part of the experience of being an artist is the process itself. And so there's a satisfaction and an illumination that comes from actually going through the steps. And I found that quite inspiring way of looking at it. What I've been sort of working at in the last weeks is how do we convey this part of our project, the research process, because I think that's an important part of the research experience that we need to convey, especially when we're using new tools such as the ones we're talking about. But I'm looking around. Ah, right. You want to react to that?
The
Go
point
ahead.
in this is that we are using different tools, but it's the point of that we're using different tools, and that's okay. But we have the question. We are making question to the sources and so on. We are doing different things. I don't know. I think that, yeah, we are doing different things, but we are not abandoning the old ones. So, and that's it. The process of doing it, they are giving you knowledge in a way.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with that. No, I'm looking around for other
I have
reactions.
some question.
Ah, right. Okay, so let's.
I would like to add something, because for me,
Sarah.
Álvaro's database is a research product. When it will become public and I hope online and open to all, it will be a research product like an article or book. Maybe now the traditional academia doesn't evaluate it as an article, a paper, or a book, but I hope that in the future we will find new ways to evaluate also digital products and artifacts. And I have two questions for you. How many documents did you enter in your database, and how long did it take? And I would like to know if you applied all the TEI rules, because I follow some workshop on TEI and I find it quite difficult to understand, and like the manual is very long and complex.
Sorry, second question was how many documents
if you applied all the TEI rules, or if you decide which rules are useful for your corpus.
Okay, how many documents? At the end, doing the labeling was like 400, 440, well, I don't know, 400. When I do the transcription, it was like 700, but I need to reduce this number because I don't have time. Yeah, I know. And 400, I think that it's enough. I don't know. I don't. At the end, I use this 400 only for one exercise. That was the first one. The second one, it's reduced to I don't know, because it's only a period. I can look at if you want the answer, but I don't know right now. And the third one, it's more reduced. It was like 25 or 30 documents. So that's it. It's in this case, I was playing. I think I was playing with the, okay, we have this method. We are applied to 400 documents. All right, we are going to see what happened if we reduce the number. And it happened this, and we can focus the analysis, because if I ask the same questions to these 400 documents that to do it in 100, it's the point is to analyze the data. You're not going to be able to, I mean, in my case, I wasn't able to work with all the data of 400 documents for doing the second exercise. So this is why I reduced the quantity. So, but I don't remember the exact number. And the second question, I think about the knowledge of IT technology, And in this case, I don't do any specific course. I have the help of I participate in this Avisos de Levante project that was very formative for me. I work with them, with a person called David Domínguez Hebron, that is the person who helped me with the map, but not a specific course. I go to conferences and so on, but no, not enough. And all the knowledge I try to obtain by myself or with help with David Domínguez Hebron, and that's it. And reading the books of the digital humanities or digital history. The technique, it was hard, but with the help of a technician, I think that you can do it. It's you need one, and that's it. I don't know if I answer your question. Okay.
I think Sarah is just kind of rubbing in the fact that she's in a digital humanities program. Well, lucky you, Sarah. UCC. Now,
maybe there was a question from Rachel. I'm not sure. She raised the hand, or
yes, no,
or she'll actually say hello to us. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I saw a hand. So.
Right, from Rachel. Okay.
Sorry, I was just agreeing with the point that Sarah was making about the value of the data set as a product.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have scheduled to, one of our absolute rules is to finish at 6. So we have only 9 minutes to enlarge the scope of our discussion to comprise some of these very illuminating readings. So I'm tempted at this stage to make a detour, or not even a detour, let's say, to move the discussion a little bit in the broader direction, some of the broader questions that not only you have posed, but also appear in the readings. And of course, I'm drawing attention to these 2 readings that you suggested, the one by Lou Bernard concerning the hermeneutic implications of text encoding, which I'm tempted to think of as a kind of the Zen of TEI. I think that it's a fascinating account. And then, of course, the report from the Grupo Transegantes concerning the Avisos de Levante. But you've already said something about the Avisos de Levante. So let's just consider the Zen of TEI and the significance of TEI so that we can end on an extremely profound note, I think. What is then the philosophical implication of TEI? I was curious about this choice of text. And this is I'm not specifically asking Álvaro. This is a question for everyone, and your feelings and impressions in regard to the significance of what we do from a hermeneutical perspective. I thought it was interesting the way Bernard begins his discussion with the mystical properties of hermeneutics, which is something I've never really considered that much. My conception of the hermeneutic circle has always been, let's say, more literal-minded, perhaps, thinking about the way experience builds on context and context builds on experience and so on, as being almost self-evident. But it's fascinating the different ways that text may appear depending on how it's been tagged. And we've talked a lot about tagging today. And a chief issue of tagging, of course, is all tagging involves choices. And choices, obviously, are related to interpretations. And I think where Lou Bernard is particularly, let's say, incisive is on the notion of markup as a form of interpretation. Do I have reactions to that from others in the group?
Yeah, maybe I would like maybe to say something, because what actually struck me during my own work is that indeed, if I use digital methods and if I get statistics, then it itself at some point starts to work as a hermeneutic circle, meaning that I use this, I gather the statistics and I start to analyze them. And then I start to see things. For example, I start to see that one word appears very often, or maybe some word always appears within a certain context, or it only, for example, in the case I gave a presentation, it only appeared within a certain volume. And in that sense, I start to see this word also within the text itself with different eyes. And that sense is also a circle, because the statistics also make me again read the text itself differently. So even if I use traditional methods, I can still I still regard them with different eyes.
Yeah, I think many experience this result, where once you have utilized the machine-assisted methods of analysis, it's hard to see the world in the same way again. Yes, Álvaro.
For me, it's a way to see the method in a different way. Because I was thinking, when I started with this, I was like, wow, I am doing a quantitative approach. And later I read that and I say, okay, I'm doing this process of critics. When I choose my labels, when I say I'm going to only see this information, to only analyze this information, to critique, to have the critics of this text, but in a different way or with a different tool. So for me, this is why I choose it, because it's like, there's another lecture that I don't remember the author, but Joanna Drucker, I think, that she said, he critiques the term of, and he said, all the data is, it's an interpretative way of measure things. And he proposed the word capta, I think, capta, I don't remember. So this is the same way. We are looking to a field that maybe it's more linked to the scientific point of view, I think, with a humanistic point of view. I don't know, I'm not sure about this, but we are saying, okay, we are doing interpretation, and we are still doing interpretation, although we are using machines.
In a certain way, if I can just follow up with the reading you actually gave us, what struck me the most was the attention given to the idea of a technique. So what is a technique in a way? So, and that I think, and the technique in a certain way put together these two kind of things, the scientific word, let's call it the scientific word, and the humanistic word, no? So nowadays, I think that also in a way, the hermeneutic circle, let's call it like this way, could actually help us to, in a way, to bind together these two most divergent things that seems to be divergent. But nowadays, if we look out of the windows, we see that we need more the humanities and more and a more interdisciplinary approach going on together, because the two things don't exclude themselves. So, but that's difficult because you need to learn the language, you need to understand the language. You, in my opinion, you have also been able to talk with other people that speak with different languages. And that's difficult. I mean, that's the challenge, and that's really fascinating.
Yes, I think absolutely right. I want to read a passage as we're closing here from Bernard, and he says on page 40, a curious enthusiasm surrounds us for reconstructions of imagined past times, whether in the fad for music performed on authentic instruments or reactions against modernism in architecture. I suggest this antiquarianism is also at the root of our contemporary desire to value the reproduction of allegedly primary textual sources unmediated by the skill of the textual critic. And here's the point. He says, my point here is not to suggest that such activities are worthless, but simply to call into question their ostensive claim to a higher, purer reality. And when we think of the combining of, I'm not too comfortable with the typical way of viewing the humanities and the so-called other disciplines in a sort of form of opposition. There are so many connections in the way data is gathered, even in the laboratory. So it turns out that the person who is actually utilized, as has been mentioned numerous times, the person who's actually utilizing one of the specialized instruments for that aid in describing a particular object must necessarily convey what they see to the other members of the lab. And this requires skills of verbalization and skills of communication, just the sorts of skills that the humanist is interested in analyzing from past times and also giving a sense of. So, but one thing we often see is that an engineering approach from a sort of humanistic standpoint seems to have a certain kind of certainty, a certain kind of, let's say, higher reality, if we want to say. And I think what's inspiring from Lou Bernard is is reminding ourselves that in every way of looking at things, combining the engineering with the humanities, it's still a matter of interpretation and a matter of choice. So what may appear to be a scientific or a, let's say, a higher reality rendering of things still is one version. And we're open to being able to understand a kind of hierarchy of versions and even a competition between versions and appreciate the various merits of each in a kind of a vast conversation.